Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down yet another AP Top 25 poll. And this time we're heading into Week 8. And while this week's poll maybe isn't as crazy as last week's poll or the poll from Week 6, there are still a handful of shakeups here, a handful of things we certainly do not agree with, and we're going to break everything down for you from number 1 team in the country to the 25th ranked team in the country. We're going to touch on every single team, share with you our thoughts. Again, something we're going to do every single week until the College Football Playoff Committee releases their rankings, where we will then start to release our own set of rankings. And I can promise you they will differ greatly from the AP poll and what the committee releases as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we are given, what we have going in to a major Week 8 of college football. And we need to touch on it first. There were 5 top 25 teams that lost in Week 7. So, of course, the more top 25 teams that lose, the greater the shakeups when we give you analysis on the polls. 5 teams lost. 3 of those top 25 teams dropped out. That was Auburn, who was 15th in the country, Tennessee, who was 18th in the country, and Louisiana, who was 21st in the country. Those 3 teams dropped out. Georgia and North Carolina, who fell to Alabama, and then, of course, fell to Florida State. Those 2 teams dropped, and we will touch on them here in a second, but they did remain in the top 25. So let's start over in that first column. Let's start over in the top 10, where there are actually a handful of shakeups. A handful of shakeups, probably the most that we've seen so far in the AP poll. Alabama and Clemson and Alabama, number 1 and number 2, haven't changed. And I wouldn't have expected them to change. There are a lot of people out there that think, Alabama should have jumped Clemson because they defeated Georgia, the 3rd-ranked team in the country at the time, defeated the Bulldogs by 17 points. And it truly was a very remarkable performance from Alabama and that offense. But I can't justify putting the Crimson Tide over the Tigers just yet. Clemson did win their game this past weekend. They won that game 73-7 against Georgia Tech. Now, I know Georgia Tech's no powerhouse. I know maybe they're nothing to brag about. But putting up 73 points is something to brag about. And I have to believe maybe Clemson and Dabo Swinney knew that if Alabama, or Georgia for that matter, were to win, whoever won that game, people would want to jump Clemson for that number 1 spot. But the greater the margin of victory, the better chance they had of staying at the top spot. And that's exactly what happened. So Alabama still deserves that number 2 spot. I just can't put them above Clemson right now until they lose, until Clemson mightily struggles against a team they shouldn't, or Alabama has another big game, or someone else has another big game against a higher quality opponent, and they just blow them out of the water. So Clemson, Alabama, stay at number 1, stay at number 2. Notre Dame coming in at number 3, moving up 1 spot because the Fighting Irish were number 4. Georgia was number 3. The Bulldogs lost, and so the Fighting Irish moved up a spot. So really Notre Dame and Georgia just swapped spots in this week's poll. The thing is, I don't think Notre Dame right now is a top 3 team in the country. I mean, literally, if the playoffs were to happen right now, you would have Clemson versus Georgia, Alabama versus Notre Dame. Does anyone in their right mind believe that Notre Dame could take down Alabama? Because they can't. They couldn't. And no disrespect to the Fighting Irish, but Notre Dame could not beat Clemson right now, I don't think. They could not beat Alabama. I don't even know if they could beat Georgia. And those are all the teams that would be grouped in that top 4 with them. Notre Dame just came off a 12-7 victory over Louisville. Beat the Cardinals by 5 points in South Bend. Remember, this was a Louisville team that allowed 46 points to Georgia Tech, fell to the Yellow Jackets. The same Yellow Jackets team just allowed 73 points to Clemson. And Notre Dame could only muster 12 points against that pretty bad Louisville defense. And I know their defense stepped up and held Louisville to 7, but still, had their defense just been a little bit worse, Notre Dame absolutely would have lost that game. So I don't know if I can justify putting Notre Dame up at number 3. And many will say, well, where do you want to put them? I don't know. Georgia had to drop you. I couldn't imagine Georgia staying at 3. So Georgia drops 1 spot. Ohio State hasn't played. Oklahoma State didn't play. So considering how many teams within the top 10 didn't play this week, only the top 5 teams played in Week 7. I understand the move for Notre Dame up at number 3. But as the Big Ten starts to play some games, as other teams start to play, and maybe if Notre Dame continues to struggle, expect the Fighting Irish to drop a handful of spots because right now, they have not shown me that they are a top 3 team in the country. And it's not just based off that Louisville victory, it's based off a handful of other performances as well. Georgia in at number 4, as we mentioned, dropping just 1 spot following their loss to Alabama. Rightfully deserved. I would have been shocked if Georgia had dropped outside the top 5. They were leading Alabama at halftime. They were only trailing Alabama by 3 late in the third quarter, only trailed by 10 going into the fourth quarter. So Georgia was in that game for the entire game. Until Alabama got up by 17, Georgia was in it and had their chances. So to drop Georgia outside the top 5 would have been ridiculous. So the Bulldogs staying at 4, fully agree with. Ohio State has not played. They're at 5. They do play this weekend, though. The Big Ten returning this week in Week 8. So next week's top 25 poll, expect tons of shifts. Handful of Big Ten teams will lose. We'll finally get to see them in action, so we'll finally have an idea of what they look like and whether their rankings so far are justified. Ohio State, of course, being the highest-ranked Big Ten program. They're at number 5. Oklahoma State did not play this past weekend. They come in at number 6, but have a huge game this weekend against Iowa State. So we're going to have much more on that game tomorrow in our Week 8 predictions video, and then we'll have that as one of our games of the week as well. So stay tuned for that analysis. Oklahoma State in at 6, A&M up at number 7, Texas A&M moving up 4 spots. Texas A&M was one of the biggest risers. Texas A&M and Virginia Tech were the biggest risers in the top 25, each moving up 4 spots this week. The Aggies taking down Mississippi State on the road 1 week after they upset Florida. So Jimbo Fisher and his squad, they really seem to be rolling right now. Huge win against Florida. Some thought they'd have a letdown game against Mike Leach and that air raid offense. They didn't. They took easy business against Mississippi State, a team that fooled us all a few weeks ago after that win against LSU. That feels like a distant memory by the way the Bulldogs have been playing in recent weeks. So A&M up to number 7, and there's a chance, guys. They've already gotten past Alabama. That's already 1 loss for A&M. Their schedule is very favorable going down the stretch. Who else in the SEC West, or maybe in the SEC, could take down the Aggies? LSU has not looked impressive. Auburn has not looked impressive. Could it be Arkansas? Is Arkansas really A&M's toughest test for the remainder of the year? And even then, that game's in College Station. I would assume the Aggies could win that game. So don't sleep on Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M, guys. If things go their way, they could be a college football playoff contender and be fighting for that top 4 spot, and they might not even have to play in the SEC championship game. So Texas A&M in at 7. Don't sleep on the Aggies. You've got Penn State coming in at number 8. They moved up a spot. They get back in action this weekend against Indiana. Cincinnati, their game was postponed against Tulsa due to COVID-19, unfortunately. That was a trendy upset pick for many, but we'll never know now. Cincinnati dropping a spot, though, to number 9. And then Florida remaining the same. Alabama, Clemson, Florida, the 3 teams in the top 10 that did not change spots in this updated poll. Florida, the Gators staying at number 10. They also did not play. And Dan Mullen, this past weekend, testing positive for COVID-19. So, of course, we hope that he's going to be okay, and we wish him a very safe and speedy recovery, along with everybody in his family and within the Florida Gators program. So there's your first column, your top 10. A lot of shifts, maybe nothing too major. The biggest game of the past weekend was Alabama-Georgia. Alabama stayed the same. Georgia dropped a spot. So nothing super crazy within the top 10 was shifting. The one team that you do want to see and was the biggest changer in the top 10 was North Carolina. And we're going to touch on everybody else before then, but North Carolina tied for 14th now, they are dropping 9 spots. So yes, tied for 14th with Wisconsin after their upset loss to Florida State in Tallahassee. Now that was a game that no one saw coming. If you did, you're lying to yourself. The way Florida State's played, the way they've played defense, the way North Carolina's been putting up points, the way their offense clicked the week before against Virginia Tech, no one thought that North Carolina was going to go on the road and lose that game. But here we are. That's college football in 2020 for you. Tar Heels were 5th in the country. A lot of people didn't think they deserved to be that high. They were right. They dropped 9 spots, one of the biggest droppers in terms of teams that remained in the top 25, one of the biggest fallers in this week's poll. And it very well could have been more. You drop from 5th to 14th. I think that's generous. I could have made a very strong case for someone to say North Carolina drops to 18th or 17th, because that loss to Florida State, guys, yeah, it was 31-28. They were trailing 31-7 at halftime. It was ugly. It was ugly. They did everything in their power to come back and win that game, but came up short. So a huge win for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. Mack Brown remains winless against Florida State. Winless against Florida State, his alma mater. And obviously North Carolina has a lot of work to be done. Remaining in that column, let's start at the top. Miami at number 11. They took down Pittsburgh, moved up a few spots because of that. Pittsburgh, of course, not playing without, or playing without their star quarterback in Kenny Pickett. BYU, they take down Houston on the road on Friday night. They scored the final 29 points. They scored 29 unanswered points after trailing by 12 in the third quarter. So that was pretty impressive. You know, we mentioned that in our weekend recap. We said good teams find a way to do stuff like that. You know, you don't see mediocre teams or even bad teams that are able to score 29 unanswered and win the game convincingly. BYU is a very solid team. You need to watch out for them. You need to watch out for their quarterback in Zach Wilson, who had 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. So the Cougars, up to number 12. They're not playoff contenders. We know that. We know that when the playoff committee releases their rankings in a few weeks, BYU is going to be nowhere near where they are right now because their strength of schedule is pitiful. But they do have a very good chance of going undefeated and going to a very, very good bowl game. So the Cougars in at 12. Oregon in at 13th. Team out of the Pac-12. Again, we haven't seen the Pac-12 in action yet. They'll be back in action here in a few weeks. Then we can kind of start to gauge them and kind of give you more analysis on those teams like we'll be able to do with the Big Ten following Week 8. So Oregon in at 13th. North Carolina in a tie for 14th with Wisconsin. Another Big Ten team and another tie. I hate ties. I hate ties regardless of what it is. I hate how you can tie in the NFL. The only place where I think ties are acceptable is in soccer. That's the only place where I think ties are acceptable, especially in your little group stages for big tournaments. Outside of that, just pick a winner. Give someone the edge here. I know it's a voting system. I know it's a point system, but I mean, come on, it's not that difficult. So North Carolina and Wisconsin, they'll share the 14th ranked spot. That won't be the case next week because one of them, even if they both win, you're not going to have a tie with either of these squads. So you got Wisconsin here. They're back in action on Friday night, kicking off the Big Ten slate. Following Wisconsin, you move on down to SMU, number 16 in the country. They move up one spot following their overtime victory over Tulane. They've got a big game this Saturday. They host Cincinnati, number 9, number 16 in Dallas. Why is that such a big game? It's not just a big game because it's a top 25 matchup. It's a big game because the winner of that automatically is the front runner for that New Year's Six bowl spot. Both these teams are in the American Athletic Conference. The winner of that game will remain undefeated and will be, I would assume, the highest ranked Group of 5 team after that point. Even if SMU wins that game, I believe that they are going to jump Cincinnati in the rankings. I can't imagine that Cincinnati will remain above SMU if the Mustangs win. So that's a huge game for both. Cincinnati can get some more separation from their American Athletic Conference opponents, taking down a very tough SMU team on the road. SMU can show that they are not a fluke. You know, last year they had such a great start and then kind of petered out towards the end. They're off to a great start again. Can they keep that up? So a huge game on Saturday. We will touch more on that tomorrow in our Week 8 predictions video. So do not miss out on that. But the Mustangs, keep an eye on them. Iowa State, they move up 3 spots. They've got a game against Oklahoma State on Saturday. We mentioned that earlier. The Cowboys coming in at number 7. I believe, or 6, number 6. All the rankings a little messed up there. Number 6, Oklahoma State, and that's going to be a huge game. That's going to be an absolutely huge game because that's going to determine really who's going to be front runner in the Big 12. 3 teams remain undefeated in the conference. It's Iowa State, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. 2 of those teams meet on Saturday, and that game will be played in Stillwater. So we're going to have analysis on that all week long. But Iowa State moving up 3 spots. They look like a completely different team ever since they lost to Louisiana back in Week 1. And then after that, you've got Michigan at 18, and you've got Virginia Tech at 19. Michigan, I like them a lot at 18 right now. And we're going to get a very good chance to see if they deserve that 18th ranked spot. We're going to get a very good chance to see if Michigan can live up to their hype when they face Minnesota, who we have at number 21 down here, when they face off against Minnesota on Saturday. The site of College Game Day, our game of the week. That analysis coming out tomorrow and Wednesday. So you're going to get a doubleheader between the Wolverines and the Golden Gophers. Harbaugh, Fleck, Joe Milton making his debut with the Wolverines, going up against an 11-win Minnesota team led by Tanner Morgan. Top 25 matchup was not the like, kicking off the Big Ten slate. So Michigan in at 18, big top 25 matchup there against Minnesota. Virginia Tech moving up 4 spots. We mentioned the Hokies and Texas A&M were the 2 teams that moved the most in the top 25. Virginia Tech also moving up 4 spots after their dominating win against Boston College. Very, very impressive performance against Boston College. Many thought that could be an upset where the Eagles come in to Blacksburg and pull off the win, and they defeated the Eagles 40-14. They had 350 rushing yards, 164 of those coming from their quarterback and Hendon Hooker. So Hooker's back. He's healthy. He looks better than ever. You've got Khalil Herbert in the backfield, who's a threat both on the ground and in the passing game. This Virginia Tech team is legit, guys. And, we talked about contenders in the ACC. Who could challenge Clemson? Maybe it's still North Carolina. Maybe it's Miami. Maybe it's Virginia Tech. Do not sleep on the undefeated Hokies. And after that, rounding out the top 20 is Kansas State. They did not play this past weekend, but again, one of those 3 teams in the Big 12 that's still undefeated in conference play. So Kansas State's games against Oklahoma State, their games against Iowa State, every game this point forward for those 3 teams is huge and critical. Because more than likely, Oklahoma and Texas aren't going to make the Big 12 championship game. Those 3 teams are your front runners of who's going to get in. And remember, only 2 can get there. So Kansas State in at 20th. Like Iowa State, they've looked like a completely different team ever since they lost to Arkansas State in their season opener. A really unbelievable turnaround for both the Cyclones and the Wildcats. Final column here. Let's wrap it up. Minnesota, we mentioned them. They move up a few spots. Big showdown against Michigan. They get to host them, though. College Game Day's in town. We'll have more analysis on that later in the week. Marshall is now ranked. They're 4-0. We've praised Marshall over and over and over again. They were ranked a few weeks ago, and then when these Big Ten and Pac-12 teams were added, they got dropped out. Well, now they're back in. And there's no excuse for it now. They're back in, and you can't say, well, they're going to drop out here pretty soon because more teams are going to be added. No. Every team that should be ranked is ranked now, and that includes the Thundering Herd. They're 4-0. They're allowing just 9.5 points per game. They've won every single game by at least 10 points. That includes that big win over Appalachian State a few weeks ago. Grant Wells, Brendan Knox, this defense, they're my pick as of right now to win the Conference USA. And I'm telling you guys, if things go crazy in the American Athletic Conference, Marshall is a very good contender for that highest-ranked Group of 5 school to get into a New Year's Six bowl game. If things go haywire in the American Athletic, I doubt they will, but if they do, don't sleep on the Thundering Herd, guys, because they have a very good chance to finish the year undefeated with the amount of talent they have on Doc Holliday's squad. Marshall in at number 22. You come in at number 23, NC State. They deserve to be there. 4-1. Unbelievable turnaround for Dave Doeren and his Wolfpack squad. But they just lost their star quarterback in Devin Leary for 4 to 8 weeks with a broken fibula. Ouch. And I hated to see him get off the field in that game against Duke. Hated to see the Wolfpack losing because he has taken a major step forward. Was not that great last year. This year has surprised everybody. Along with the entire team. But they're 4-1. They've got a game against North Carolina on Saturday, so that in-state rivalry here, ranked versus ranked showdown, we'll touch more on that game later this week. But the Wolfpack certainly deserved to be ranked, and something that I definitely didn't think was going to happen back before the season began. USC in at 24, Pac-12 program. They'll be playing here in a few weeks. Again, we're going to get to see if they deserve to be ranked or not. High expectations for the Trojans this year. And then finally, Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina out of the Sun Belt, 4-0, making their first ever appearance in the top 25. So congratulations to the Chanticleers, guys. They're 4-0. They just went on the road and took down Louisiana, who at the time was the 21st ranked team in the country. That's why Coastal Carolina is in here. They've won every game prior to that by at least 15 points. Louisiana was their closest win, kicking that game-winning field goal to win by 3. But they dominated Arkansas State, beat them by 29. They went on the road and beat Kansas by 15, a Power 5 program. You go on the road and you beat a ranked team in Louisiana who also beat a Big 12 program earlier in the year. this Chanticleer's program is legit, guys. They are legit. Grayson McCall is the real deal at quarterback. This front seven for Coastal Carolina is the real deal. They have a very good chance to win the Sun Belt this season, at least to make the Sun Belt Championship, as they do get to host Appalachian State in late November. So I'm thrilled for them. I'm happy for them. They deserve this spot, and they just made history. First ever appearance in the AP Top 25 poll. Coastal Carolina. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That is why college football is so great, guys. And that, again, is just another indication and another reason why 2020, this season, has been one of the craziest seasons in college football history. So there you have it, guys. Your updated AP Top 25 poll going into Week 8. Going into Week 8 of this college football season, and it's going to be a big one. We've got 4 ranked versus ranked matchups. We're going to break all of those down for you tomorrow in our Week 8 predictions video. 2 of those games will be our games of the week, so do not miss out on those. You got those matchups. The Big Ten returns this week, and of course, we've got tons of other great games in between as well. So College Football Saturday is upon us. It's getting very, very close yet again, and we're going to have you covered and getting you hyped for it every step of the way. So make sure not to miss any of that content right here on the Gridiron Expert. And again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share the videos, all that good stuff. If you love college football, this is the place for you. We cover it 24/7, 365, so don't miss out on any of it. And again, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.